My book this week, my book, let me tell you, I was picking my book and I was going through my books and I was like, which should I share? And one of the things I realized was a lot of my books obviously are centered around the same kind of topics, the occult sciences, all these different things like that. So, a lot of that stuff includes what people consider religious texts or lost religious texts or in information in that way. And so I am a question person. So I will ask you 9,000 questions. I'll ask you 9,000 questions. I'm like, and why did that happen? And when did that happen? And who did it? And why did I want to know everything. I want to know everything. So I am going to share this book with you. So for those that don't know, every year we do a fall and winter study, right? And in our fall and winter studies, we it's certain books that we do every year, and then there's certain books that we bring on, to swap out other books. And because of the position I've held as Dean of Education for the last 20 something years, automatically when I get a book, I break it into a curriculum. I go in looking for thought-provoking questions. I go in and I look at the text and see how it's tied together and all these technical things that y'all don't have to deal with. So I do all that. So y'all can come for this part. This is the entertainment because you know how we get down. But one of the books that we cover all the time is Retire Your Family Karma. Everybody know we do that one, and a lot of other spiritual books. And so this book right here is a complete. I can't say a complete unread because of the reason I bought the book. So I'm just gonna share it. I'm gonna slide it up here, and bam, here it is. This is the book that I bring it, the original Maccabees Bible with Psalm 151 in there. And for all of my theologians, y'all know in the Bible as y'all have it stands right now, you got 150. So what they talk about in 151, we're gonna talk about in this book. So how did I end up with this book? We talk about the different texts and how, regardless of your race, creed, religious thoughts, background, you can take any book if you are a true seeker and find something in it that is thought-provoking and allowing you to grow, spiritually in your walk. And so when I was getting ready to write the curriculum one year, we were going to do a 1-year study on Judaism, and the Kabbalah, the mystical Kabbalah, all of that good stuff like that. And, a lot of that text, takes you into the Gnostic space. You know what I mean? So you start talking about the books of the Bible that weren't included, the writings about the Bible way before the Bible, before the Christian era, and all those different things like that. So I got to do my nerd thing and read y'all some stuff first. Okay. All right. So Reverend Dr. Roderick M. McLean, right? It says the original Maccabees Bible with Psalms 151 offers us a fresh look at the story of the Maccabees, a Jewish rebellion against oppression in the 2nd century BCE. Instead of just focusing on the historical battles, the book uses the Maccabees struggle as a metaphor for our own inner battles, and adds Psalm 151, a psalm usually left out of modern Bibles, to deepen the spiritual understanding of the story. The approximate timeline for these events: 167 BCE, before Christian era. For those who don't know, BCE, the Maccabean revolt begins. The Seleucid king tries to force Hellenistic, which is the Greek culture and religion, on the Jews, leading to a widespread rebellion. In 164 BCE, the Jews, led by Judah Maccabee, recaptured the temple in Jerusalem, rededicated, a celebration still observed today as Hanukkah. For all of those who don't know, Hanukkah got mad power with it. Y'all really need to check in on Hanukkah because it got some jewels in there. Following the decades, the Maccabees continue fighting for their independence and religious freedom. The period is marked by ongoing conflict and eventually the establishment of a Hasmonean dynasty. And it talks about the Maccabees fights in these mirrors. They mirror in these stories mirrors our own internal struggles against things like doubt, fear, and the pressure to conform. And one of the things we talk most about in Mawalisa Temple is freeing yourself from the boxes of religion and dogma that will allow you to just explore and free yourself from that and live your best life learning about all the things, right? Some people think that's confusion, but it's really not. Inner strength. The book emphasizes finding your own inner strength and connecting to something greater than yourself, just as the Maccabees found strength through their faith. It shows how God helped the Maccabees and encourages readers to recognize their own God's help in their own lives. In the inclusion of Psalm 151, a lesser known psalm attributed to King David, as a layer of spiritual insight, showing how even historical figures face the spiritual challenges. The Maccabees' perseverance, despite overwhelming odds, teaches the importance of staying strong in the face of adversity. And finally, the book examines the importance of justice and doing what's right, regardless of the cost. And you know, Nick, this takes us back to our unmasking morality. And, you know, it's so funny because these topics, like I said, usually end up overlapping and tying together. So the book here, it says it's classified as religion, Judaism, and Hebrew studies, right? And it was published by the Research Associate School of Time Publications and Frontline Distribution International. They call it a collector's jewel. So, you know, just for that reason, I had to have it anyway. Collector's jewel. And it says, I beseech thee, therefore, those that read this book, that they be not discouraged because of the calamities, but account that these punishments were not for the destruction, but for chastising of the race. And indeed, for those who act impiously will not be let alone any long time, but straightway meet with retribution, a sign of great beneficence. And I think that was interesting. I thought it was interesting. And so you will not find this in the Bible for obvious reasons. It was before the Christian era. You know, for all those people who hold so tightly to the Bible, I'd be like, what do you think they was doing before that? Nothing? You think they wasn't doing nothing? You know, they was doing something. And so when I picked up this book, my intention was to go in and go ahead and draw do a curriculum that would take us over the course of about a year, you know, maybe 9 months to 12 months to cover these things, because you had to cover so much to be able to really understand the time periods you were in, what was going on politically, historically, and otherwise, especially religiously. And so in this Maccabees Bible, it has an introduction, and then first Maccabees, second Maccabees, third Maccabees, then Psalm 151, and then fourth Maccabees. So the first and second Maccabees were part of the Latin Bible, And in the Protestant church, they were not included amongst the canonical books. They were part of the Apocrypha. And for those of you who don't know about the Apocrypha was a book composed from the text taken out of what is known as the Bible today, the Council of Nicaea, and that's how that was done. It says this book was withdrawn from holy use. The Jewish standard of judgment was accepted, and they did not part from the Hebrew Bible. It says in the 39 articles of the Anglican Church, it is said that the Apocrypha, other books of the church, doth be read for examination, examples of life, instruction, and manners, but does not apply to them to establish any doctrine. So basically, they letting you know, yeah, you got the Bible, but for those learning people that's on that left-hand path, this is what you need, because this got some information that's not over there for everybody else. And it really takes you into a deeper place. Now, what I will say is that one of the reasons we didn't use this book was because many people had not truly grasped how the Maccabees came to be, because you don't hear about them much. And I have a really mind-blowing thing, because last night, let me tell you something. I called myself putting my notes together and everything, and I end up reading and being another 3 other books. And I'm just like, what am I doing right now? You know what I'm saying? I'm doing all the things. You know,
that's how it always happens.
I'm doing all the things, right? So I'm just like, okay. So I was like, what is it that I really want to bring from this? And you know, and so when I thought about it, it just became one of those things where I felt like it wouldn't be beneficial to teach it without a formal history. You know what I'm saying? Without people having a formal history, or at least an introduction to the history. So when I'm sitting last night and I'm like, well, how am I going to bring this book to show them how this ties all in? Nick, it is a surprise week. So hold your horses.
Oh, boy.
I had to bring out this book.
What you got there?
It says from text to tradition. It says the history. It has a history of the Second Temple and the rabbinic Judaism and rabbinic Judaism. Let me just say for the record, I don't know who did all this writing back in the day, but they could have came up with a whole lot of shorter words, because some of these words, some of these names, some of these words, they be blowing my mind, but that's going to take us to something good at the end. So you just hold on. So in this book here, the reason this was going to be a part of this study with this particular book was it talks about taking the text that was used as their political law, if you will, because you have to remember, they let us know that the Old Testament dealt with the law. You know what I'm saying? So you won't hear about none of this stuff when you read in New Testament works, only when you go outside and you look into the apocryphal works, or you look into books like this. And one of the beauties of this book, and let me just say, because I told you how I got this. You see this book right here? Let me tell you, whenever my library puts a bunch of books on the sidewalk, I go to like 6 different libraries, y'all. I am a true book nerd. And whenever they put out books, if they tell me, if I get my little alert telling me they putting out books on the weekend, I am there. Let me just say for the record, I am with y'all right now. And you know where I could be? Getting some music, because WJFF is having their once in a year album sale. And I always go get me some good opera. Yeah, I get myself some good R&B, but I'm here. So rock with me, cook with me, be here with me. And I thank you. So I pulled out this book because to talk about the Maccabees, again, you don't find them in many places. So my thought was, well, when I got that book, how did I intend on leading up to them, since you never hear about them anywhere else. So I thought about this book because this book takes the law and shows us how they took the text that they followed as law and used it across history to write a history story. They used it to write their law, use the law to write the history, to control their politics, and to control religion. So they took this book from text to tradition. So they letting you know already, they created this control source for you.
Okay.
And that's the thing that's so cool about this, because what do we talk about? Learning how to think for yourself and deprogram and decondition ourselves from the dogma and the lies that we were told that were written and put in place to keep us in a place of what? Servitude, slavery. And right. What did it tell us when in Dr. McLean's book, the studying of the Maccabees and their struggles is to take us into ourselves and teach us about truly being free. Because people think just because they walk around, they get in their car, they go where they want to go, and they think they free. They think they free. Let me let y'all know, some of us ain't free. If you want to get free, we'll talk to some more folks, but there's some interesting things we could tell you. We got some references, y'all. We got some references. So I pulled out this book and I was like, oh, it's going to be so unfair. I'm bringing out more than one book, but I got to have a source. I'm an Aquarian. I got to have receipts. So when I pulled out this book, the first thing I went looking for, I went in the back and I went in the index and I looked for the Maccabees. And basically half of the M's deal with the Maccabees. They got the Maccabean period, they got the Maccabean revolt, they got the Maccabees themselves, and they got the books of the Maccabees. You know what I'm saying? So I went in and I'm like, okay, so what they got to say about the Maccabees? And when they first make mention of them is on page, amen. I said I didn't want to do too many notes because this is definitely a bonus hit them up later kind of thing. On page 65 is the first place that they are mentioned. So let me just say this book was falling apart, but I got it. But since I've had it, trust me, it's falling apart even more and not on purpose. Okay, so in page 65, they start talking about the kings, in the years of conflict between the rival parties or the Jewish parties or factions. So basically what they letting you know where we are in a period of time is when the Jewish faith was dividing itself. It was dividing itself. Somebody had a beef. They was like, I don't believe we should be doing that. They said, I don't believe we should be doing this. And people just were stepping off, right? So I found it very important that they went into how they went from Hebrews to Jews. Okay. And how they used to mean the same thing, but they are not the same. And how they never were the same to some people. So of course they go into the priesthood and all these different things like that. And the revolt is where I think we begin to see how we can use this book to tap into our inner teacher. So it was something I wanted to read out of here for you. Okay. All right. The people were forced to convert to Judaism. What was they converting from? Okay. The people were forced to convert from Judaism. And it says Simon's son, Aristobulus, the first, succeeded him. And he says he continued his father's conquest, subduing the people in the north and converting them to Judaism and gaining control over Galilee. And it says, after treating his mother with the utmost cruelty, imprisoning 3 of his brothers, and having another brother killed, he died of remorse and a painful disease. And he was the first of the Hasmonean kings to style himself as a king. Now, why is this important? Before it wasn't no kings. So all this kingly stuff we hear talked about later, he established himself as a king with the cruelty that he used to overcome the people. Now they also talk about this time also being the time of Alexander. People say the Great, but Alexander the Conqueror, the homie Alexandra, and they give a Hasmonean family. Now I'm going to close this because, again, like I said, I can continue on and on in here. And there was actually one place where I saw how the Moors could have taken some of this text to stand on what they've been saying all along. And also I thought about the Hebrew Israelites and what they've said about some of the things that we haven't been taught and the things that have been hid from us in terms about who we are. The importance of reading books that take you deeper into the inner teacher is that what it does is, regardless of what you've been lied about, misled about, you begin to grow your intuition to decide and see what works best for you, right? So, and what applies to you. Now, I am big on definitions and roots of words and all kinds of things like that. So as I'm going through and I'm seeing all these things about the importance of really understanding this work, I said to myself, well, I know that metaphysically, every name of every person, every name of every tribe, every name of every land or land mass really has to do with inner stuff. You know what I'm saying? So what did I do? I pulled out my metaphysical dictionary. Mind y'all, I was up to 3:30. So just, you had to listen, I'm telling you, it got deep. I'm gonna cut my bill in a second because trust me, I was cooking so hard I had to stop. And so I go into the metaphysical dictionary, and I've been using this metaphysical dictionary since 96, maybe 96. And it's usually not many words I can't find in it. I'm going through M's, no Maccabees. Wait a minute, what? So then they said the Maccabees in this book was also the Hasmoneans, right? I go through the H's. Any Hasmoneans? No Hasmoneans. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. And then I'm like, well, wait a minute. Let me go back into this book. Who else was around? The Samaritans were around. The Sanhedrin were around. So if the Sanhedrin were mentioned and the Samaritans were the other group that he conquered, why is the information about the Maccabees not there? Or these Hasmoneans? What is it really? What is it? What is a Hasmonean? What faculty of the body does this relate to? What part? Is it the actual intuition itself? Could it possibly be the search for the internal truth, like many of the Gnostic texts are? So let me just say my interest was definitely repeat, repeat in going into this. And trust me, I'm gonna find me some metaphysical definitions for them words because I ain't gonna let that go. Trust me, I ain't letting it go. Trust me, I'm not letting it go. But I will say this, just in closing this part, and I'll give it to you and let you ask some questions. I said the Psalm 151 is in here for all my Bible folk, for all my theologians, my scholars, my seekers. If you've read the Bible that we have now, you'll know that it only has 150 Psalms in it. And this one was one that was said to be kept out for various reasons. You know, they give some different reasons here why it was kept out. But what I'll do is I won't read it all because you know as we can, the Psalms can get kind of long. But I thought it was some points in here that were important that needed to be pointed out. So it says, as anybody who's read the Psalms, like I said, you know, usually they have a little subtitle underneath it, whatever. So this one is no different. Psalm 151, the hallelujah of David, the son of Jesse. You need to know who David is, and you need to know who Jesse is to really, truly understand what you can get from this text. And I'm saying that metaphysically, not in the story of the history that we know from this book they made up as part of their politics and their control source, right? So it says, smaller was I than my brothers, the youngest of the sons of my father. So he made me the shepherd of his flock and a ruler over his kids. My hands have made an instrument, and my fingers are lyre. And I have rendered glory to the Lord, though I within my soul. And it says, the mountains do not witness him, nor the hills proclaim. The trees have cherished my words, and the flock my works. For who can proclaim or can bespeak, and who can recount the deeds of the Lord? Everything has God seen, and everything has he heard, and he has heeded. And then it just goes on to a couple more stanzas here. And what it tells us in this text is that where this particular text was found, they also found 2 lines to begin a Psalm 152. So you have to ask yourself, what some of these things were about. And it says also that the following text of the Psalms 151 talked about David's fight and victory over Goliath. And again, we have to remember, if this is teaching us, sharing with us ways to grow and overcome our inner whatever, our inner struggles, our inner battles, our inner strengths, right? Then we can see a reason why people would keep that out. Because if I can tell you how to defeat your inner demons, you know how to defeat me too. And you are no longer under my rule when you are free from that fear. Because most times the things that they embed in those books, even though they do have great things, is a lot of fear. And we see in this particular book from the textual tradition how they knew that. They took what was working in law and they said, well, hey, look, if you do this crime, we're going to send you to jail, or this is going to be your punishment. And if you do this other thing that we don't like, you're going to go to hell. So I got you in a constant state of you will do whatever I say not to be punished. And that's how they wrote the history. Like everybody was down with it, but they wasn't. They were forced to be down with it. So when people talk about, in Islam, the only reason they did it is because they was forced, oh, they in Christianity, they was being forced to follow these doctrines is not new. And the true freedom comes from being able to take these kind of books, whether they're the popular ones or the unpopular ones from the right hand or left hand path, and go in and defeat your demons. Face yourself. So a couple of questions I wrote down was, how do I battle negative thoughts or temptations? What stops me from living my life fully and authentically? Where do I find strength and guidance? How can I be more resilient and determined in the face of challenges? And what is justice to me, and how do I promote it? Because that's one of the things the Maccabees talk about, is about being free and being able to live their life without all of the restrictions of the people who were enforcing upon them the new ways that they were switching to based upon the decisions of the historians and the politicians. So, my offerings. My offerings, man. My offerings. Yo, and I can cook some more in this, I promise you. But it's like that's like a whole master class you would have to do.
That's what I was just getting ready to say. That's an entire master class right there. Yeah, that's a whole semester course at a university, week by week right there. With required readings, term papers, the whole nine, in class discussions. Yeah. Goodness. Man, we find some synchronicity somehow. I mean, if it's not in the books themselves, because I don't see the connection in the books, but I just happen to be wearing this hoodie today.
I saw that.
Yeah, wearing this hoodie today. Got that on there, and then I got ISUPK down there on the bottom there.
Yes.
Got it, yeah, that wasn't planned.
Not at all. Oh, and you know what? You talk about you can't see the way it's tied. I can show you directly the way it's tied, because it's talking about the solitude. What are we doing in the solitude? We dealing with the inner. We dealing with the inner. We refining the inner. We taking the things that's in there that may no longer serve us or may not be truly what our version of what love might be, or our understanding of what it might be, and changing it so we could truly experience the freedom to love. They were trying to have the freedom to live. That's part of it, is the freedom to love. And love is going to always feel restricted and going to always feel, you know what I'm saying, tainted, when you're not able to, one, define what it is and what it looks like for yourself, thinking, and then being able to have the space to actually do it. The freedom from fear to live it in its entirety.
Did that. Yeah. You found you found the connection. You found the connection. Yeah, you found the space and the connection.
All about the inner work, and that's what we mostly talk about anyway. We are not here to convince anybody. Like I said, we study what we need. Right. This is for this. I need this. I need to free myself from some deep-seated fear. People put fear in you from the beginning. From the beginning. And most of us got that heaven-hell chip. Most of us got that chip that, we can't question authority. Whose authority? It was a room full of jokers that sat around and decided, you know what? We can make them do anything we want them to do if we tell them we're going to punish them. And because they in these ignorant states and they want to be led because they have no idea what they're doing, because we've disconnected them from their, culture and ancestry. Think about it. How did our ancestors teach love? Was that part of freedom? and
Yeah,
vice versa.
driving force. Yep, the driving force for freedom. You know, when you gotta, when you have a very daunting task, and you know, like I said, the number 21, it's not that's not the Chaldean, but even if we relate it back to the tarot, and we talk about that hero's journey for the world card in tarot, you got this big daunting journey ahead of you, and it seems like, it seems very overwhelming and intimidating because the enemy looks larger than you. The enemy seems like they have more soldiers than you, and they have bigger weapons than you. What do you use? You got to go deep inside yourself, and find that passion and that love, and that's the force. And a lot of, and then if you go back to a lot of these modern movies, from the past 20, 30 years, and they have these overcoming odds they have to get through. What does it always go back to? It always go back to somebody being in love, or somebody either loving their people, or loving their significant other. They go back and beat all the bad guys, and all the
I should
in the
avenge
villain.
my brother.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. They're able to overcome the villain, defeat the villain and the bad guys from the power of love.
The power of love. But
Power.
it's interesting that you said smaller and all these guys bigger. What was the first thing he said? Smaller was I than my brothers, and the youngest of the sons. But he made me the shepherd of his flock and the ruler over his kids. So it don't matter that they bigger. Don't matter. Because you can go in and truly know self and be able to run all of that. You can handle all of that. You can shepherd all of that. You lead that. That talks about that really goes into, and again, this is not trying to take the conversation all the way as deep as it can go, but this goes into realizing the different things inside of us. It's like, people make fun and talk about multiple personalities and all these things like that. I'm not even talking about the mental health aspect of that. I'm talking about how we have all these conflicting emotions inside of us. So you could say I was the smallest of my father's children. I'm here, and my brothers, all my incels, my siblings, you know what I'm saying? All of that in there. We really, it's, I think that the sad part for me sometimes when I think about the limitations that fear puts on people is we don't get to use our imagination. I'm a big anime head. And anime is always talking about the hero's journey, the arc, where we are, and y'all should join me for my nerd talk on comics and all things anime, because it is awesome. But nonetheless, we talk about these hero arcs, these journeys. And one of the things I think that's sad also is that they always make us look at the end as the important part of the journey, when the importance is the journey itself.
Yeah.
And you only get to know that by starting the journey and really respecting and examining where you are in the journey. Why do I think like this? What do I think? What are my morals? What are my standards? What are my thoughts about love? Because if you're going to ask yourself about love, don't you got to ask yourself about hate?
Dude,
let's go back to them love songs. It's a thin line between love and hate. The sweetest woman in the world can be the meanest woman in the world if you make her that way. What? Let me tell you something. Esoteric talks on music, movies, and all things that is entertainment. I'm gonna tell you, it'll show you why many of us are locked in the boxes that we are. And that'll show us the reason why the music that's written today is so important. And it comes from the minds of the people. You know, the minds of the people are what you see and reflected in their music. They write these things because this is what's reflected in their reality, whether it's healthy or whether it's not. This is what they experience. And this is what they promoting. And I just know for myself as a grandparent, you know what I'm saying? It was hard enough for me raising my children and keeping them away from all the rigmarole. I can't even imagine now when you got a phone in your hand that can connect you all over to the world and every piece of information, whether I want you to know it or not. And you don't even know if it's right and exact. So this is why going in and trusting our own, getting used to and trusting our own intuition and having these conversations, not just in the institutions, i.e. churches, schools, all this place, but with each other, sitting down deliberately and breaking some of these chains, breaking the chains of psychological slavery, pal, you know, this is where we are. This is where we are, man. That's my build, y'all. Original Maccabees Bible with Psalm 151. Check it out. Check it out. And Brother Nick will have all of that put down for y'all. Promise you. And I will put those questions and a few others. I will get those over to Nick so you can put them down in the description as well. And hey, talk back to us. You know, like we said, we're coming up on a year. I know all those numbers and stuff usually reflect what's going on, but let me tell you, we cooking over here. And if you ain't here with us, you missing out. So that's what I'm gonna tell you. But then again, are you missing out? You might be the op. Stay over there where you at. Anyway, do you got any questions? Anything that popped out to you about the book that I shared?
Yeah. I mean, you kind of alluded to it. So maybe you'll go back into it a little bit. But I I don't know if I should even ask, because if I ask this question, you might go on an hour build on. But you did mention it. You did bring up the division between the division amongst the Jewish faith or the Judaism, and I'm thinking about what were some of those differences, and then you also brought up the Hebrew and Jews not being the same. So I was thinking about those distinctions, and then also Israelite, or if that's more of a modern thing. But that was the first, or one of the things that I was thinking about. You know what? Let me just put a couple things together first, and then I'll come back to that question. So yeah, one of those things was definitely the division within the faith and the distinctions between Hebrews, Jews, Israelites. I'm also thinking about what the time period too. I know you kind of mentioned that transition period, but outside of the Bible, when you're just looking at the Jewish or the Hebrew texts, and you think about those books alone, without the New Testament, like the Torah and the Talmud and the Tanakh, where the Maccabees kind of fits into those Jewish texts. That's something else or Hebrew text, that's something else that came to mind. And then when you're talking about the metaphysical aspects of it, I thought about going back to almost a year ago, one of the books that I brought, How to Understand Your Bible by Manly P. Hall. He went into both the Old and the New Testament. So in dealing with how those names have metaphysical meanings and how they relate to astrology and the Kabbalah and Gnosticism and I guess Jewish mysticism, because Gnosticism would be more associated with like the New Testament side of Christianity, but you also had the Jewish mysticism and the Kabbalah, and like I said, the astrological aspects of it. So we see your your offering for this week not only ties into our previous episode with the left hand path, but also what I brought almost a year ago with the Manly P. Hall and how to understand your Bible. There's definitely some similarities. He went in there and broke down the name, the occult or metaphysical meaning or breakdown of Israel and things like that, and some of those stories from the Old Testament. So I thought about that, and I think one more thing that I thought about with with that, I might have touched on it already. I'm just looking at my notes. I was thinking about how it fits into the other text, but I guess how does it fit into the narrative? I guess that's the word that I'm looking for. How do the Maccabees fit into the Israelite narrative? Because it seems like throughout all of these Israelite books, they're going through, some type of trial or some type of battle. Like they have a long history within those religious texts. The Israelites, uh, the promised lands and wars against, other nations, and God bringing down God, Yahweh, well, the whole Yahweh El thing, that's a whole other conversation. But whatever that God was in the Old Testament, the judgments he's bringing down on the Israelites and the curses is just, yeah, like how it fits into the overall narrative of the Israelites. So these are all kind of things that's popping up into my head. And just with all of those points I brought up, that's a whole separate 2 hour course in of itself.
It really is. It really is. And it really is. It really is. And they talk about the first ruler of Judah, and I think that's how they tie in the Israelite aspect of it. And it was interesting. One of the things I had initially planned when I was going to use this book for that particular course I was putting together was including some of the Hebrew Israelite brothers that I've known over the years, and including some of the Moors that practice the Moorish science in over the years, because a lot of the ancient texts that they talk about, you can see when you ask the question about these different splits and factions and all of these things like this. First of all, we have to remember metaphysically, like you said, all these things mean something else. And for the most part, you'll have a group of people who don't even believe we really having this experience, that it's all in our head. So
Right, that part, yeah.
because one of the reasons why I went looking immediately for into the metaphysical dictionary was I wanted to know who was these people, these Maccabees, and what did they represent? Who was this Simon? Who was this because we know that it's covered in the 12 faculties of man, how each aspect of the brain deals with a different disciple, and how that disciple represents a different function in the spiritual growth and on the spiritual journey. So it's like none of these, for those who be like, well, how long is they going to talk about that? Well, I'm going to talk about it till I don't have no more breath. You know what I'm saying? How about that? Because it never gets boring to me, because I'll never know it all. You know what I'm saying? I'll never know it all. And even when I know it all, that's liable to change as I begin to get deeper and learn more, inside. Because we have to remember, it's so much more than these written books. Like I said, I've never heard of that author that you brought, and I am in the bookstore constantly. I am in health and wellness conferences constantly. In these circles, how have I never heard of this man? And he's how many followers did you say he had? Over 5 million followers or something?
Mm-hmm.
I ain't never heard of him at all. But what this shows us is that, we need these kind of spaces where we can share what we got going on and what we want to know. Because see, one of the things I wouldn't want to sit here and do is sit here and pretend to know all the intricacies of the practices of the Hebrew Israelites without them sit here and give their own testimony to what they think about this book. Because I know I've seen Hebrew Israelite brothers with this book and a few others. So my thing is, I'd like to know what their take on it is. Because because my thing is this, we know that there's not one of the three major religions that hasn't been dissected into at least 70 sects each. It tells us that in the Quran. 73, 72, 75 sects of one type of, practice. You can run off a laundry list of how many kinds of Christians it is. And the little tiny idiosyncrasies that separate them seem almost idiotic when you think about it. You know what I mean? It seems almost idiotic. And it's like, but what does it tell us? That men are always find something to argue about.
Yep, absolutely.
And you know what I'm saying? And so when we use these things not to argue with people, but to show them how it can lead to success on the inner spiritual journey, because that's what we really ultimately trying to do. All this outside riffing about land and all these different things like that, that's the worldly stuff. The freedom that we really want to feel is true freedom. The love we want to feel is true love. The thing we want to feel is truly gifted to be wherever it is we are and to be our greatest versions of ourselves. And that's difficult, with all of these rules that have been put in place by all of these different factions. You know what I mean? It's like you got to step out of all the boxes and just look at them where they are and be like, you know what? This is all right. This is all right. This is all right. And you will have people say, because I've had people say, oh, they just confused. They confused because they can't pick one, so they picking something from everything else. You can't pick how you going. Let me tell you something, y'all.
Tell
them. I'm going to do whatever is best for me. I've tried to live in the box. And when you ask questions in the box, the way you feel made to be so small in these answers they give you. I remember asking a question one time and they said, you just got to believe, yo. Just stop asking questions. Girl, you could be go get married. Go be somebody's wife and shut up. You know what I'm saying? It's like, yo, I got questions. You know what I'm saying? I got questions. And it's that, again, it goes back to your book, In the Solitude, and being able to realize when I can't get answers from the box, am I willing to go sit in my own and just get to sort it out? To sort it out. And, I think that when some people approach their studies, they pick it up and they try to do like we do with a school book or with a novel, just read it from front to back. You need to stop. If it's a word that you come across that you don't know, write it down. Look it up.
Look it up. Yep.
If it's a paragraph that you got to read 3 times because you ain't get it the first 2 times, read it 3 times. There's no rush. There's no rush and there's no right and wrong way to do this. But if you want to get to the deeper, if you want to use these things, these gifts that apparent, my thing is this, you don't keep nothing away from nobody unless you think it's a reason that they can use it to be free. You know what I mean? Like if this was something that helped to further restrict, it'd be right there in the Bible with everything else. Same thing for the Apocrypha, same thing for all the other things. They put all that on the table and say, yep, y'all can have all of that. But no, they'd be like, don't read this because, that's the devil. Don't read this because that's going to take you to hell. Don't read this. And it's like, come on, man. We talking about BCE, before the Christian era, before the Christian era. And if you want to be truly, I'm not a law person in the way of sitting down studying maritime law and all that good stuff like that. I know how to navigate. Don't get that screwed up. But at the same time, I was sitting here saying to myself, my mother used to have a saying, who died and left you boss? Who said you could write all the daggone rules and everybody else got following? Who is you? You know what I'm saying? So these councils, they used to come together and decide what it is that you're supposed to be doing. Who are you, yo? Who are you? And how does, how does it differ me going in and doing the same thing you doing, deciding what works for me? You said that works for me. You don't even know me. Oh, well, generally, we know all the people's problems. No, you know. The little nuances, no, you don't. You know what I'm saying? But again, I promise you, this stuff right here, I just encourage people, take some time, get to know yourselves. That solitude that Nick is talking about in his book, that space right there can be used for so much more, because there's a level of love called agape, people don't want, because you got to use the God word, I'm so scared of people. I'm so tired of people being scared of that word, yo. This is just, but I get it. But they talk about agape love and how this love is a different love than other kinds of love. And I think, saying one of my former Professor Barnes, giving you a shout out, Essex County College, what I'm saying, sociology of the family, what I'm saying, he talked to us about the levels of love.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? This was back in 92, 93, somewhere in there. But I never forget sitting in that class, and he was talking about how him and his wife had been married for like 38 years. And he said, for every one of those levels of love is a level of hell.
Mm.
And he said, because love, he said, the decision to love comes with the wisdom and experience to apply it. And I was just like, you know what? That's a bar, yo.
It is. It is.
Bar, son. I'm like, that's a bar, yo. It's a wisdom thing, man. And you don't get that without the experience. So even when we sit down and we begin to find a way to have these conversations with the youth, with ourselves, whatever, with each other, it's still gonna be things we have questions about. It's still gonna be things we refine. It's still, it's this is why it's important. It's just important, yo.